Dear children, I hope you all are fit and fine. Well, children, in the previous lesson, we had covered present tense and its four forms. Today, we shall study about past tense and its four forms. Simple past tense. Now, as you can see, children, reflecting on your screen, the form. We have the subjects I, you, we, they, he, she, it, but it follows the verb that should be in the second form. Now, when I talk about second form, let's see what it is. Children, the simple past tense is formed by using the past tense form of the verb, and that is actually the second form of the verb. For example, she sang, the children played, I wrote a letter. Now, children, if you compare these three sentences, you will find that sentence number 1 and sentence number 2 does not have any object. Thus, it is intransitive by nature. Whereas the third sentence, that is I wrote a letter. Letter is an object. Henceforth, it is transitive by nature. Moving on to the second part, the formation of simple past tense. The negative sentences have the form did not or didn't plus the main verbs. For example, she did not sing, the children didn't play, I did not write a letter. Similarly, children, the interrogative sentences are formed by placing did before the subject and the base form of the verb after the subject. For example, did she sing? So children, did is a verb, she is subject, sing is also a verb. Now moving on to the fourth part, that is the negative interrogative sentences are formed by placing did before the subject and not before the verb. For example, did she not sing or didn't she sing? Next example, didn't the children play? Now coming down to the main part, children, that is uses of the simple past. Now children, the uses of the simple past is very important. So you need to go through it very carefully. For example, the very first part, simple past can be used to indicate an action that was completed in the past. Generally, the adverbials of the past time are used. For example, I went to Delhi yesterday. He wrote a letter to her last week. She met us 2 days ago. Now children, when I talk about adverbials, in the first sentence you can see I is your subject. Went is again the second form of the verb. Whereas Delhi yesterday is referring to the adverb. Now moving on to the second part of simple past tense, that is it can be used sometimes without adverbials of time. For example, my father congratulated me on my brilliant success. Now children, here the adverbial part is missing. Second, our team won the match. Third way of using simple past tense, for an activity done in the past. Example, Satish studied for 3 hours. I swam for half an hour. So these are the actions which were done in the past. So here we can use simple past tense. Simple past tense, children, can also be used to express a habitual or regular action in the past. For example, my father always got up at 4 a.m. It can also be used, children, in conditional clauses. Conditional chapters you must have studied in class 8. For example, if you went there, you should meet him. If she worked hard, she would pass. Sixth part where we use simple past tense, it is in the indirect form of speech. Children, this is again one very important chapter. So whenever you transform a sentence, a direct sentence into indirect sentence, you use past tense. For example, He said, I work for 8 hours every day. Again, the same sentence, if you transform in indirect speech, it would become, he said that he worked for 8 hours every day. Now, coming down to the second form, children, that is the past progressive tense. Now, as you can see on your screen reflecting the formation, children, the subject remains the same. I, you, we, they, he, she, it. But the verb which will follow changes. That is was plus present participle or were plus past participle. Now, coming down to the forms in detail. The past progressive tense has the form was or were plus present participle. That is verb plus ing. Example, he was writing a letter. The children were playing. Second way of putting past progressive tense, that is the negative sentences are formed by placing not between was, were and the present participle. For example, he was not writing a letter. The children were not playing. The interrogative sentences of this kind are formed by placing was or were before the subject. For example, was he writing a letter? Were the children playing? Now, children, the negative interrogative sentences are formed by putting was or were before the subject and not before the present participle. In contracted forms, we write wasn't and weren't. Example, was he not writing a letter? Were the children not doing their work? Wasn't he writing a letter? Weren't the children playing? So these are few examples. Now coming down to the most important part, that is uses of the past progressive tense. Again, children, something very important. Now here it is used to express a state or an action that was continuing at a certain point of time in the past. It had begun before that point and was probably continuing after it. Now we use adverbials of time. Like for example, she was cooking at 8 a.m. Now children, 8 a.m. is the adverbial of time. Second example, I was going to college in the morning. So here was going is of course your past progressive tense and in the morning is adverbial phrase. Now children, second point, to express an action that was in progress in the past. For example, he was sleeping. I was reading a newspaper. So these were the actions that were in progress in the past time. Third way to use is to express an action in progress at some point of time in the past when another event took place. This is very important, children. She was watching TV when he came. Now children, you cannot use the same tense in both. You cannot say like she was watching TV when he was coming. One has to follow past and the other one past progressive. Next, number 4, to describe two or more actions continuing at the same time. While I was bathing, my sister was washing clothes. So children, here two actions are going on simultaneously. While he was doing homework, his brother was listening to songs. So here in this case, of course, you can use, progressive tenses in both the part. Number 5, to indicate a frequently repeated action or persistent habit in the past. For example, he was constantly complaining about something or the other. Second example, Sohan was always smoking whether at home or in office. Now children, coming down to the next form, that is past perfect tense. Now past perfect tense, children, as you can see, the subjects remain the same but the verb changes. Had plus past participle. This is the usage or this is the form. Now the form in detail. The past perfect tense has the form had plus past participle as seen there. Example, he had taken his lunch. She had never been to Agra. Similarly, the negative sentences are formed by placing not after had The contracted form is hadn't. He had not taken his lunch. I hadn't read this book before. Number 3, the interrogative sentences are formed by using had before the subject. Had he taken his lunch? Had you ever been to Agra? Now, fourth, the negative interrogative sentences are formed by placing had before the subject and not before the past participle. For example, had he not taken his lunch? Had you not read this book before? Now, children, uses of the past perfect tense. The past perfect tense is used, number 1, for an action that had been completed before another action began in the past. I had done my work before he came. Means already you had completed the work when he came. Next, to describe an action taking place before a particular time in the past. By 2 p.m. all the students had left the school. Third, to describe an action in the past which became the cause of another action. The child was crying because the father had beaten him. Now, number 4, to describe an action in the past using the time adverbials such as already, since, before, etc. Number 1, he had already left for Ludhiana. She had not come here since 1960. And fifth point, that is to express an unfulfilled wish. If you had worked hard, you would have passed. Children, this is also an example of a conditional sentence, which we shall study somewhere later. Now, children, the last or the fourth form of past tense, that is past perfect progressive tense. Now, children, again the subject remains the same, but the use of verb changes. Had been plus present participle. It takes had been plus present participle. Now, the past perfect progressive tense has the form had plus been plus present participle. Example, they had been waiting here since morning. She had been dancing for half an hour. Number 2, the negative sentences are formed by using not between had and been. That is, had not been. They had not been doing any work. She had not been dancing. Similarly, the interrogative sentences are formed by using had before the subject. Had they been doing any work? Had she been dancing for half an hour? And the fourth, that is the negative interrogative sentences are formed by placing had before the subject and not before been. Had they not been waiting for us? Now, the most important part, that is the uses of past perfect progressive tense. Now, the children, the past perfect progressive tense is used to describe an action in the past that had begun and had been going on for some time before another action took place in the past. For example, the match had been going on for several hours. To express a repeated action in the past. She had always been asking us for help. Third, to describe an action which began before the time of speaking in the past. The action either stopped before that time or continued up to it. For example, the farmer had been plowing since morning. Well, children, I hope this video lesson would help you to comprehend and utilize tenses in the correct way. Well, this is all about past tense today. You are instructed to solve the related exercise, which will be given in the form of a PDF in your notebook. Till then, children, stay safe and have a cheerful day ahead. Thank you.